It's hard to imagine a world where Tom Hanks isn't Forrest Gump, but what may come as a surprise to some, Tom wasn't actually the first choice for this iconic role. And fun fact, it turns out that some of the more iconic movie roles in cinematic history were never actually played by the actors and actresses which the original directors or studio had wanted for the part. It almost seems too incredible to be true because it seems as though the roles were written specifically for them, and nowadays it is impossible for us to imagine anyone else taking on those roles. So, in today's video, we're going to be going over some actors that were never the first choice for their iconic scenes, as well as ones who were originally set to play them. But before we get into the video, if you do enjoy this content, please give us a big thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel if you want more content just like this, as well as dinging that notification bell so you never miss another update from us. Tom Hanks. Hanks ended up being cast as one of his most iconic roles, Forrest Gump, after John Travolta had turned down the role. These days, it kind of seems crazy that anybody other than Tom Hanks would play the part of Forrest Gump, but the megastar wasn't the studio's first choice. The actor that they actually had in mind was John Travolta, and when he turned the role down, it was then offered to Chevy Chase and Bill Murray, who both actually turned it down as well. That same year, Travolta would go on to star in Quentin Tarantino's acclaimed drama Pulp Fiction, but had admitted that turning down the role was a big mistake. All these big names aside, interestingly enough, the actor of the original novel, Winston Groom, pushed for John Goodman as he believed that he would be the perfect Forrest. Robert Pattinson as Edward Cullen. The role of this Cullen was originally offered to Henry Cavill. The Justice League star had announced to play the eternally aged vampire and was reportedly the favorite of the author Stephanie Meyer, who ended up writing the romance novels the film was actually based on. Quote, "I think the writer of the books, when the movie came around, I think I was her first choice," Cavill explained. "That's the rumor I heard, and she wanted me to play the role, but it wasn't up to her, and instead, a very talented actor played him instead." The aforementioned actor was Robert Pattinson, who ended up playing Cullen in 5 movies from 2008 to 2012. Joel Kinnaman as Suicide Squad's Rick Flag. Either you love it or you hate it. Suicide Squad did feature an impressive lineup of movie stars, which had included Will Smith, Margot Robbie, Jared Leto, Joel Kinnaman, and much more. Granted, Kinnaman isn't exactly the biggest name in Hollywood, and many can agree that he did a great job as playing Rick Flag, the Special Forces colonel who was tasked with keeping the ragtag bunch of baddies in line. However, while Kinnaman certainly holds his own against the antics of the A-listers, he wasn't the first choice for the part of the role. In fact, the Swedish actor was actually the last person picked. That is because the role of Rick was originally meant for a guy with a DC film already on his resume, Tom Hardy, and the man who had played Bane was, well, pretty excited to show up alongside Deadshot and Harley Quinn. Only thing though is he had to drop out thanks to a film called The Revenant. According to Hardy, the Alejandro Inarritu film was supposed to wrap up a lot earlier than it actually did. Unfortunately, due to a lack of snow, production on The Revenant was shut down for 3 months, throwing Hardy's schedule way off track. And since it was going to take additional time to finish up his Mountain Man movie, Hardy was forced to pull out of Suicide Squad, a decision that left him gutted and constantly complaining about how The Revenant was, quote, losing him significant money on a daily basis. However, Suicide Squad was absolutely savaged by critics, and Hardy went on to win an Oscar nod for his turn as Jonathan Fitzgerald. So, at the end of the day, things seem to have worked out pretty well for the English actor. Reese Witherspoon in Legally Blonde. Although Reese Witherspoon perfectly embodies the role of Elle Woods, the role was initially offered to Christina Applegate to play our favorite silver screen blonde. The Dead to Me star had turned down the role, saying in an interview that she received the script right after she had wrapped up Married with Children and quote-unquote got scared of the role. Quote, "I got scared of kind of repeating myself," she said, adding later that she was hesitant to play yet another ditzy blonde. Quote, "What a stupid move that was, right?" Applegate was happy with how everything did end up turning out though, explaining, quote, "Reese deserved that. She did a much better job than I ever could, and so that's her life. That's her path." Miles Teller in the movie La La Land. Teller has been open about missing out on the movie musical role that was made famous by Ryan Gosling. He made the statement that he almost gave up the film War Dogs due to rescheduling conflicts with La La Land when he unexpectedly found out that the film was moving forward without him. Quote, "I got a call from my agent saying, 'Hey, I just got a call from Lionsgate. Damien told them that he no longer thinks you're creatively right for the the project. He's moving on without you. Despite the change of plans, Teller remained optimistic as he stated, quote, "I'm a pretty strong believer that everything happens for a reason." The character of James Bond from the movie Casino Royale. Although we now know this iconic character ended up being Daniel Craig, many action stars were considered for the role of Britain's most famous double agent. One of those was actually Mel Gibson, who didn't end up getting the role, as it was claimed that producers found him physically too short to be able to actually play the part. Liam Neeson even turned down the chance to become a Bond a good 20 years ago because his then fiance was uncomfortable with the thought of her future husband cozying up to a bunch of Bond girls. While exes mourned the loss of their would-be spies to varying degrees, there was one actor who will always be known as the one that got away: Jackman. Yep, we're talking about Hugh Jackman, the Hugh Jackman. For Jackman, turning down the Bond franchise was an easy choice. He simply didn't have any faith in the material. He said that the scripts had quote-unquote become unbelievable and crazy. Nevertheless, he was willing to take the part provided the writing be toned down a bit. When producers refused to go along with Jackman's demands, he refused to sign on to the franchise. The character of Han Solo in the Star Wars saga. As many can agree, this successful movie franchise had quite an amazing cast, and despite the franchise's enormous roster of famous characters, perhaps the most iconic is the lovable rogue Han Solo. Harrison Ford perfectly embodies Solo's rakish charm, but believe it or not, he had some fierce competition for the part of the infamous smuggler. Ford stated that the studio had narrowed down their choices to two separate trios of actors. He was one, and Christopher Walken was the other. When met with surprise over this bit of trivia, Ford was quick to defend the casting choice, saying he could absolutely see Walken piloting the Millennium Falcon. While that's certainly a gracious point of view, we're glad that Ford shot first. Vin Diesel as Dominic Toretto in Fast and Furious. The Fast and Furious franchise is full of memorable characters, from Han and Letty to Luke, Hobbs, and Brian O'Connor. And of course, how could you ever forget Dominic Toretto, the street racing criminal who puts family above all else? He's appeared in every single entry in the series except one, and he's basically the rock of the whole Fast and Furious universe. Similarly, it's impossible to think of anyone else besides Vin Diesel playing the part of Dom. Alongside the late great Paul Walker, Diesel is the face of the franchise, but as you could probably guess, Diesel wasn't number one on the list of actors to try out for Toretto. Speaking on the Bill Simons podcast, producer Neil H. Moritz had talked about making the first film and explaining that while Walker was Brian from the get-go, studio executives were keen to cast Timothy Olyphant as Dom. That's right, we're talking about the man from Deadwood and Santa Clara Diet, the same guy that had played Deputy U.S. Marshal Ryland Givens of Justified fame. However, for unknown reasons, Olyphant passed on the part, which Moritz described as, quote, "the luckiest thing that ever happened to us." True, seeing Olyphant as Dom would have been interesting, but picking Diesel was obviously the right choice. The first Fast and Furious earned $207 million on a $38 million budget, and the series has gone on to become one of the top 10 highest grossing franchises of all time, largely thanks to Diesel's star power. So, as many can conclude, it looks like the studio execs at Universal eventually chose the right man for the job. With that said, that's gonna wrap up this video. Did any of the actors on this list shock you? Let us know in the comments section down below, and thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, we'll see you later.